Welcome back to Sketch a Day. I'm Spencer Nugent, and today we'll be continuing our series of this week's demos about perspective. And since it's the second day of the week, we're going to go over two-point perspective. And last time, if you recall, we did a little sketch. Here's the finished version. Hopefully you guys can see this. Here it is on the overhead. And this sketch, to complete that sketch rather, we did a little underlay of our one-point perspective here and did an overlay of that to get the final drawing. And last time I mentioned something called a picture plane, and I'd just like to go over explaining that a little bit better. I have a visual aid with me today to help do that. So let's get right into it. Okay. So I have with me here a clear piece of plastic. Here it is on screen. There we go. Clear piece of plastic. So this, you can imagine, represents the picture plane. Okay, so it's a transparent plane between me and what I see. So if I have an object here and I'm looking at it, this object is between me and the picture plane. Now I'm going to turn to the side here. So in one-point perspective, this picture plane is parallel to the face of the object as I'm observing it. So as long as this face right here is parallel to my picture plane, it could be touching, right? I can lower and raise it, move it to the side, move it to this side. That's representative of one-point perspective. Now, as soon as I rotate this, like so, I now have two-point perspective, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And what I've done here, hopefully you can see this, is now just an edge of this cube. Maybe from the top you can see a little bit better. The edge of this cube is coincident to the picture plane. If I'm doing one-point perspective, I've got the face that is coplanar or parallel to the picture plane. Okay, so that's 1 point, here's 2 point. 3-point perspective, we'll get into that tomorrow, but essentially, instead of just having the edge, we now have a point. Okay, that is coincident to that picture plane. All right. So if that's confusing, don't worry. We'll go over in a little bit more detail tomorrow, and I'll use the same visual aid. So for 2-point perspective, we're going to set up a similar thing like we did with our 1-point perspective. So I have a horizon line. I suggest if you're watching this video for the first time, just go back and watch my video on 1-point perspective, and hopefully a lot of this will make more sense. So I've marked here on the left and right a left vanishing point and a right vanishing point. Now, since only one edge is touching my picture plane, I start my drawing by drawing an edge. Remember, in 1-point perspective, we started our drawing by drawing the entire face. Okay, and here it is outlined in red, the face that we drew first. Okay, and then we drew everything else. In 2-point perspective, we start with this edge. Okay, and this is what we call our leading edge. And not to get too technical, but the leading edge really is the one point of reference for measuring things in perspective. There's also what's called a ground line, where you can take tick marks and mark a measurement, and go back to a measuring point and figure out exact perspective. But we're just gonna kind of guesstimate here. Now we know that all receding lines in perspective go to a corresponding vanishing point. So lines that go to the left go to the left vanishing point. Lines that go to the right go to the right vanishing point. We also know that if I'm drawing something, for example, a cube, we know a cube has equal length sides all the way around. So I can look at this measurement with my pen. If I were to go like this and mark here, and let's say I drew this line, that doesn't look right. That's not what we normally see with our eyes. So what we need to do is then shorten, okay, this length right here proportionally such that it starts to read more like a cube. And I probably could have come something like this. It takes a little bit of practice, but you get the hang of it, especially if you have some sort of reference for a cube. It becomes easier with time. Okay, the other thing with 2-point perspective is, as the name implies, there are 2 vanishing points. Okay, so the lines that recede to the left and the right, these lines here, all appear to converge to a point. These lines here all appear to converge to a point as well. Okay, and all our vertical lines, meaning these lines, are all parallel to each other. Okay, and the reason for that is there's just 2 vanishing points and this leading edge. Again, looking at our visual aid here. So here's my box. Our leading edge is touching that picture plane. Okay, that edge is coplanar with that picture plane. So now that we understand that, I'll show you guys a little trick. Let's say I was designing something like a pencil sharpener. If you've watched me over the years, you've probably seen this example before. But let's say I want to design a quick pencil sharpener, and I want to show that sketch in 2-point perspective. Usually when I design something, I start with a thumbnail of what the design looks like. Okay, so here's a side view. Here's a front view. Okay, let's round those corners just a little bit. Maybe throw some feet on. And there's our chord. Okay, so side view. Now, what I can do and observe, rather, I've drawn this in a way such that the proportion of this sharpener is 2 squares wide. Okay, and if I observe by drawing through these 2 points, A and B, so halfway up this first square, and I draw through, I end up hitting kind of where this next square starts. So we can take that relationship and throw it into perspective and get a pretty good proportional representation of our pencil sharpener. So I can start by drawing one square in 2-point perspective. Again, these 2 lines being parallel to each other. And then I can draw out, like so, these 3 lines converging, right? We can also draw the limit of our first cube, that far edge. Okay, so there's my first cube. If we want, we can draw through as well, just to make sure we're on. By draw through, I mean we kind of draw the skeleton of the whole thing. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is divide this line A, B here, vertically. And now I can draw through these 2 points in perspective. And now I've estimated where my next cube rests in this chain of cubes. And so I've sketched a proportional representation of this orthographic view in perspective. So now we can round our corners. If you're not sure how to do that, you can watch my video on ellipses where I talk about how to round corners and create ellipses. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is because in my front view I have that division there. You can also divide height-wise, right? Half and half. So divide this here, draw through to this point. Okay, there's my shaving tray, and also 2 ellipses on front for where the pencil goes in. And if you want, just to add to the presentation, you can add a little drawing of a pencil and an arrow in perspective showing that this is where the pencil goes, right in there to be sharpened. Okay, pretty cool, right? So there's an example of where you'd see kind of a 2-point perspective object. And the reason I chose this object is because it's something that, proportionally speaking, would be represented in a way such that our eye level is above the object. Presenting things in a familiar way helps, 1, give a sense of scale, but also 2, gives a sense of familiarity to the object so that we know what it is, where it would live, and approximately how big it would be. You can even add just a couple of details here on the front, maybe a quick drop shadow to ground it to the page, and tie everything together with some background element. Okay, and with a little bit of line weight, clean up some of our construction lines here. I'm using a Sharpie to do this. Okay, so pretty basic, but there's an example of a quick 2-point perspective sketch. Well, thanks again for joining me. If you like what you see, be sure to subscribe to my channel. It's been a great experience doing this again with you guys, and I'm learning a ton. I'm reminding myself of a ton, and hopefully you guys are learning and having a good time as well. So yeah, subscribe. If you want to find me on Instagram, I am at sketchaday.com, or you can find me at facebook.com/sketchaday. Or if you just like the website and you just want to see sketches, it's just sketchaday.com with hyphens between sketch A and day. Thanks again, and we'll see you tomorrow on Sketchaday, where we'll cover 3-point perspective and some examples of where and how we see that.